Well, I'll start with Iji, Joella Uji, Mayo Keiji, Ine, Donna Hogan, Ite, Doug Hogan, Itzon, Alan Rear, Itzon Cho, Big Maisie, and Alan Prophet. So honoring my family and my grandparents where I come from, but also acknowledging that I'm here today in Mayo at the confluence of the Stewart and Mayo River, and with the snowstorm brewing outside. So so good to be here. And I really didn't, with the Yukon Soaps Company, I guess if you don't know, my background is in environmental science and community development. And so I worked for a long time for my First Nation in that area. And at one point just thought that I wanted a little side hustle. And so this business had already been a long-term Yukon business known as the Essential Soap Bar. And so the timing just kind of aligned, that the business was for sale. It also aligned with my values. I used the product for a long time. And so I thought this would be a little thing that I could do on the side while I worked full time. And I really had no idea, of course, that it would turn into this bigger, incredible thing. Yeah, so that's just kind of it in a nutshell. But when I was looking for some kind of business venture, that I wanted to make sure that it was something that I would want to do every day, that it aligned with my values. I wasn't just going to start any business, but I really, I had no idea that it would be this.
And so when you were looking for the business to buy, or for that side hustle, and you saw this company, what are some of the specific things that drew you in? You mentioned it tied in with your values. Like, what were some of the things that stood out that you thought that I can relate to that and I want to share that with Yukoners?
Yeah, I guess I always had an interest in plants and traditional medicines, that I was raised with a lot of those teachings and around women who were reclaiming that part of our culture. So had that interest. And then, of course, interested in natural things like aromatherapy and natural skincare and wellness. And then just also had this interest in obviously making money, right? Like that was key too. Like I don't ever want to avoid that part, that really it was about making money. It wasn't about having a new hobby, because we all have those, but I also wanted something that was going to make money so that I could have a better life. And so it was just those kinds of things, but I wanted something that I could put kind of my everything into it, and that would work in a small community of Mayo, that not every kind of business would be able to be successful in a small rural northern community. And so it had to be something that I could do that way.
And there's a couple of things that I actually want to expand on that on, but we can start with the first one. You talk about just the plants and the traditional medicines, and even just looking at some of your products and seeing some of the stuff you use. A lot of it comes from the land, the juniper berries, rose petals, that kind of stuff. Talk about why it's important to incorporate those ingredients into your product.
Well, I mean, we are so lucky in the Yukon to have like this beautiful forest around us. And I think that provides like emotional well-being to so many people. And that's why we choose to live in the Yukon or stay in the Yukon. And so being then able to incorporate that into natural body care products, like so much of what we have out here has, medicinal and healing properties. And so trying to include that into soap. But it was also a way for me to connect with people in the community, because people love being out on the land harvesting too, right? And so people are already harvesting berries and and wildlife and fish and that kind of thing, but particularly around plants, people were already doing that. And so it just seemed like a natural way to be able to include people into this new venture.
You're giving me all these perfect segues, but I want to talk a little bit about the community piece. And one of the things that stood out to me when I was just taking a look at your website too, was that you're a community building, language learning, earth connecting hub. And Mayo is not a central hub like Toronto, but you have a very successful business there in a place that's fairly remote. What are some of the challenges that come with that? And then also some of the benefits that come with the fact that you do live in this small connected community?
So many, and especially right now. I mean, for people that follow me on Instagram or Facebook, I mean, I often share because I want people to see all aspects of it. But certainly these days, the shipping is really, really hard. And so, just importing raw goods to the north, let alone into a small community, is hard. And then being able to turn around and get that product out, which is why up until the past year or so, I really just focused on creating soap and product for Yukoners. I really wasn't interested in expanding beyond the Yukon or beyond Canada because it's still like a small micro business, really. And my end goal was just to be able to have like a natural product for Yukoners to be able to use. I wanted Yukoners to have access to good, safe, natural soap that was made from the land. And so that, incredible support from the community of Mayo and Yukoners. I mean, Yukoners are incredibly supportive of small business and that kind of thing. So whenever I do have an obstacle, if I reach out, then people are quick to help. I mean, even today, I have a box in Whitehorse that needs to come, and I have a box that needs to go to Whitehorse of orders. And so I just put it on social media and boom, my inbox starts blowing up with people because people want to help. People want to see succeed, and people also want their product, right? So it's lots of orders going back and forth these days too. So it's like the small Mayo community, the Yukon community, and then across Canada. I mean, we've seen this huge support for local and Indigenous business this year. Like, it is really, there's been such a huge shift in how people are purchasing this year. And I have really been able to benefit from that. I know I kind of like expanded beyond your question though.
No, but that's perfect because I always look at the Yukon and it's fascinating because it seems that only here would it be possible that you could put something out on Facebook and say, hey, someone needs their goods in Whitehorse, or I need a box delivered. And people just want to help, and they're not looking to get anything from it, but they just want to help you as a business owner. What does it feel like to know that that's the case here?
Yeah, well, obviously it's really like heartwarming and reassuring to know that there is always that support. I know from other organizations that I'm a part of that small business owners often feel like isolated, especially if you work from home like I do. It's really easy to just stay in that focus, and especially now with the pandemic, people are even more isolated. So building that community in the broader sense is even more important.
You did talk about an Indigenous business, and obviously, as a First Nations person representing your First Nation and trying to also do that work, what sort of values do you bring to your business as an Indigenous business owner? And then what do you think that says for other budding entrepreneurs, other budding Indigenous entrepreneurs who want to start something of their own?
Yeah, well, I think for me, I mean, especially in a lot of the work that I was doing related to heritage and culture, the values that I was taught by Northern Shoshone elders is sharing, caring, respect, and teaching. And so I really try to embody all of that in how I do my business and how I conduct myself. And so it's not necessarily that the recipes I use are all, traditional plant medicine recipes, because there's a certain sacredness to that, but it's more about, I guess, that behavior, and that we're really taught, to live your life in a good way and to represent your people. And that's what I really try to do. And so when I'm in public, or I'm harvesting plants, or I'm working with elders, it's kind of those teachings that I try to practice, but then also to share that with people, because I know that there is, of course, like a deep fascination with the North, Indigenous people in the Arctic, and I really feel that the sense of stewardship that I have, people want to learn about that and how we care for this land, how we live in the Yukon, what our life is like like up here. And so it's also that storytelling aspect. And I've really realized that it's not necessarily that I create a good product, it's that I have the ability to share stories of this land and help share the voice of other people that are up here. And that's what I try to do.
Yeah, and even just on your Instagram and stuff like that, and those stories that are so interesting and so captivating. As you look to spread outside of the Yukon and share those stories with more and more people, how do you do that while still protecting, those values and those teachings as you expand and reach new audiences and demographics?
Good question. I guess I'm just careful about what I share. That I think when, one of the things that I learned early on when working with elders is that, they'll tell you what you need to know. And so I try to pass that on, that the information and stories and teachings that I share are what I believe other people need to know, right? And so I don't kind of disclose that information. And when it comes to picking plants, it's about harvesting respectively and sustainably, and not over picking in certain areas, and just little teachings about not picking all the petals on one plant. It's like those kinds of things that are really, really important teachings, but they're not, that they're for everybody to know.
Mm-hmm.
I think we do see,
No, go for it, please.
I think there has been a lot of talk in the media lately about like cultural appropriation and Indigenous inspired. And so I'm a part of different collectives and conversations that are really about raising awareness about that. And so, because to me, people are like, oh, but your brand really isn't like Indigenous. Like I've heard this a few times, right? Because I don't have a feather or a dream catcher or those kinds of things, but those aren't, to me, you don't need to have that as a part of your branding or like your direct messaging to be an Indigenous business. It's about all those other things that I talked about, like values and that kind of thing. But also those symbols are not necessarily representative of Yukon Indigenous people either, right? And so trying to make sure that I'm doing things, and I know this word is overused a lot, but like in an authentic way, right? So what images are true to Yukon Indigenous people, and what will help share the stories of the North.
Yeah, it's interesting because even just listening to you talk, the not picking all the petals on a particular plant or being conscious of the areas that you go to, like it's all those things that happen, really at the start of your process that people would never even consider, even though, some companies might have the dream catcher, the feather, stuff like that. And one of the things that also stood out to me is you talked about on the website, the matriarchs in your life and how important they are. And can you expand on that and just the role that they play also in your process and when you're in the community and working on the next thing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess most people will know that my mom is a huge part of my life and does so much running around for me, especially in Whitehorse. And I'm always grateful for that, that she's often doing deliveries. And I think people often think that she is the face behind the Yukon Soaps Company because she's the one there. So that's always fun. But, I come from, strong women who are connected to the land, who are busy, who contribute their time generously to community and the Yukon through, nonprofits and volunteer and that kind of thing. And so just that spirit, I think, of connectiveness and giving back, right? That you do things to create a better place for everyone and giving back. And certainly the women in my life have inspired that. And then, also we're all related in some way. And so, I have relations in all Yukon communities, whether it's by blood or just, this concept of relations that we have. And so, I'm very, very lucky. We have one, my grandma passed away when I was young, but my great aunt Dorothy still lives here, and she's the last one remaining of 11. And so lucky to be able to have a relationship with her and to be able to spend time with her and hearing her stories and, her her concerns for future generations, and what life was like here, and just all of that. And because of the work that I was doing before, I was really, really lucky to spend a lot of time with older elders in the community too, and just to hear those kind of stories and hopefully be able to pass those on. And so much that I could share on that one.
If we could segue a little bit, I'd like to talk about sort of the nuts and bolts of running Yukon Soaps Company and what it takes to make it successful. And you did talk about sort of the future generations and the side hustle piece. So I guess the first question would be, when you got involved, did you see it growing to where it's grown now? And how is that how's your perception of that changed?
So no, I just thought it was going to be this thing that now and then I would make soap and sell it at craft fairs here and there, and update the website now and then. I really, really had no idea. And so, okay, sorry, what was the other part of the question?
Yeah, no, just like when you looking back on how you first thought it would be running a business, like what does it feel like now? Because even though it's a side hustle, it's still a very successful and a growing company.
Yeah, so I'm pretty tired, and feel like these days, my head is constantly spinning, like so many balls in the air. A growing business that has scaled really rapidly. The pandemic, so having a product that is, a part of the safety plan for people, right? Like they're continually talking about washing your hands. And so, I don't think about it too much now, but at the beginning, I certainly had concerns about how to market myself at all during a pandemic, because there was a sense of like ickiness there, right? That so many people thought this is an opportunity, but it also feels icky to be marketing at your time or taking advantage of that, right? But I also really felt like when things started, going out of stock, and it's like, I have a product that can help people. How do I do this in a good way? So that was hard, but really like my day now. So I left my full-time work with the First Nation, I think almost 3 years ago, and mostly do contract work, and I still do a lot of that kind of work because that's my career and kind of feeds my soul. But the soap business takes a lot of my time now too, and also brings like so much joy. But now I'm really lucky to have, I spent this afternoon dropping off little projects. So I have, a team of women in this community that help me with a lot of the little bits. So putting stickers on packaging and wrapping them in the little hankies that you see, right? That as much as I love doing that, I don't have time, but it's also work for people in the community. And so being able to offer that. And so now it's so much more than just my business is what I hope that people see, that I like it to think of it being like Mayo's business, and being able to provide income for people, to provide pride, because I have been very lucky to have a lot of media attention recently. And so for people to be able to see that my brand is being recognized, outside of the Yukon and internationally, and that, people from small town Mayo are able to be a part of that. And especially like this, it's mostly young women. And so for them to be able to see that it's possible to follow your dreams, to be able to make money in a good way, to be able to have a business that aligns with your values and can support your culture, I think is really important also. But I think they all see, and certainly the people I saw today, they also see how much hard work it is, right?
Yeah.
That people see that I spend a lot of time spinning, and especially these days, like I'm constantly ordering materials and trying to get things like, from different suppliers. And, the pandemic certainly has affected supply chain issues and price of items and that kind of thing. And so trying to balance all of that and meet customer demand is a huge part.
Yeah, and I do like that you mentioned the fact that you want to see it as sort of Mayo's business, because you also talk about, wanting to make money. And that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs obviously want to do. They want to be successful, but you're conscious of doing it in a good way. when you look at continuing to expand and support more people, provide more jobs, that kind of thing, is there a point where you think you'll have, quote unquote, made it, where you're happy, or will you always be looking for sort of the next challenge, the next level?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I have a vision for what our community would like, what I would like it to look like. And it's not just my vision, but when I listen to elders and leaders who negotiated land claims, who had a vision in Together Today for Our Children Tomorrow and Chapter 22, and it's about bringing economic prosperity back to our people. And so I really think about my business just being one small part of that, and would like to be a part of other things also. And so my vision is, like, right now, my business is still run out of my home just over there. But I have plans to expand and build a small facility downtown Mayo so that I can, be more visible, but also, bring our people used to connect down on the Stewart River with the mining industry and traditional trade, the connection of the rivers connecting all the communities. And so my business will be back down there. And that's really important to me, to be able to hire more people and to be able to provide a safe space in the community also for people to be able to come and gather and to be able to work. And so how big that becomes, I don't know. I mean, we have a really small town. There is a lot of work available, but I strongly believe that the work that is available doesn't necessarily match the people who are looking for work and skills now, right? Not everybody wants to work for the First Nation or has the ability, or to work at, many of the opportunities available in the mining industry, that I can see the work that I have in my business kind of providing skills, self-esteem, confidence, mentorship, so that people can go on to be a part of the bigger workforce. I don't necessarily see it as providing like long-term employment to people, not that that's not an option, but when I look, I've been an employer previously before, like I know the kind of skills and what's available. And so, my business model is really about like short-term employment for people to help them progress to the next level and being part of the bigger economy, community wellness, and really being like them best selves in that happy, healthy, and thriving community.
Is this a good time for an audience comment?
Yeah.
And just to remind everybody who's joined us late, if you have any comments, just type them in the chat and I'll either read them out for you or I'll unmute you so that you can read them. This is a short one. Lee wanted to say this, but she couldn't say it out loud because she's currently enjoying a nice walk outside, which is a neat thing we can do with this format. But she just wanted to say that, Joella, you have the most amazing marketing. I hope I said that with the right amount of enthusiasm. There were some capitalizations and exclamation points there.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you. So nice to see you.
Yeah, and actually, people keep taking my next question, but I guess we can talk about that a little bit more too. Like, as far as the marketing goes, it's not a giant firm or anything like that. Like you're doing this marketing yourself and thinking about those ideas and stuff. Like, what are some of the things that you maybe try and avoid, or some of the things that you do to get new customers to notice your product and pick it up off the shelf, that kind of thing?
Oh boy, I don't know. I feel like in a way it just comes naturally, but I mean, obviously I spend a lot of time on social media and I really try and make a point. I don't follow other soap companies or brands. I really try to look at other, handcrafted products, other sustainable brands like in the zero waste movement, and other Indigenous owned businesses and creators, and look at what other people are doing. And so that's where I spend a lot of my time. And I guess that creates the kind of inspires or drives, but I really struggle because of like the people that know me, I like to have fun and joke around. And so certainly there is some like naughty bits or humorous bits or that kind of thing, but I struggled at first on how to incorporate that with being like handcrafted natural soap business. And really, people that I talk to in marketing, and we're just like, really your brand is yourself, like don't hide those bits or keep yourself, just about plants and essential oils, make sure you bring like your full self to the table. So that has been part of it. And I think that's attracting, but it's also incredibly hard to do that all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe on that, you did talk about how it takes a lot of time to do that. What would you say takes up the most time for you as a business owner?
I think these days it's really just keeping track of inventory of raw materials, because I source things from so many different people. And so, you know, this season, as we're not closing in, but like getting closer to Christmas and realizing some products I might run out of. And so it's never just one ingredient to make one product, right? And so, for example, if I think about the Indigenous artist soaps, that for so long there was a supply chain issue with one of the ingredients that I used for there, and I finally got it. So I started, you know, promoting it, that I had it again, because so many people have been asking. Like, I hadn't been able to make it since excuse me, May or June, I think, right? And people really love that product. And so once I had it, I was so excited. But then I realized, like, do I have the bags? Do I have the stickers? Do I have the labels? And those all come from other businesses, like many within the Yukon and some outside. And so trying to keep track of all of those parts is so hard sometimes, and really overwhelming. And so now I'm spending a lot more time kind of in the back end of production. Like, I have a database system that keeps track of inventory that I have, because I can't just run down to a store in my neighborhood and grab something that I need, right? That most of it, you know, is at least in Whitehorse, and Whitehorse has had supply chain issues too. And so, but those issues aren't, I mean, obviously increased because of the pandemic, but I had those issues before. So now pandemic and huge more demand for my product. So really, yeah, so I've spent a lot of time on my computer ordering stuff and making sure that I have proper packaging and labels and everything for that.
You have such a good energy, and I just imagine, you know, an entrepreneur in the city that as soon as they run out of something, they can just pop down to a store and buy it, how they would react if they started experiencing supply chain issues. And then here you are in Mayo, in Yukon, where stuff, you know, you have to plan so much farther ahead. Do you ever think about that and sort of what you could do if you were in a bigger market, or how successful you are despite being in the smaller community in this territory?
Yeah, I do think of it, because obviously there's a part of me that's jealous, but obviously, like, the tremendous good that we have up here, like relationships and fortune and prosperity and everything. Like, we're so lucky, and my business wouldn't be the same successful business in the South. Mm-hmm. But it is also, I mean, these days, I don't know how much time I spend responding to emails who are disappointed when they look at my website and they see that I'm sold out of so many things. And so that, you know, it breaks my heart, but I try and bring humor, you know, like, oh, well, you know, the dog team didn't make it here with the supplies. Or I use that line a lot when people, especially in the US, I have a huge following in the US, and, you know, it just takes a lot longer regardless of Christmas and pandemic to get there. And in the US, they have such fast shipping. And so I just say, like, look at a map and, like, look how far your products are coming from. Like, it takes a long time. And then usually try and make, you know, jokes about, yeah, the dog teams or whatever. Yeah.
And if I can just jump in, because I did see Lana ask a question here. How did you get a big following in the US?
Well, I think a lot of it started just with our tourism industry, right? That we get such a huge amount of tourists who come from the US. And I think a lot of it, you know, if you look, especially at the senior citizens, you know, that coming to the Yukon is really about following their dreams, their bucket list trip. They save their whole life to come up here in their RV, to go through Alaska, see the Yukon, the gold rush, the land, all of that. And then what happens is they go back to Arkansas, Tennessee, North Carolina, and they think about these trips, right? And so it's easy for them to buy a bar of soap to remind them of that trip. And maybe they bought it when they were here, or maybe they saw it in gift shops along the highway, because it's in many gift shops on the Alaska Highway, and of course throughout the Yukon. And so, it's that reminder to the smell, the place, and that kind of thing. So I think that's one part of it, and that kind of target market. And the other is really, I think, a lot of Indigenous people and young people who are trying to diversify who they shop from. That these days, at least every day on Instagram, I'm tagged in a post about supporting diverse beauty and wellness products, right? And so, it's an honor to be included with all of these wellness brands across North America. And so people are just really trying to support and amplify the voices of businesses that you might not normally see on store shelves. And so, I think the last time I looked a couple of weeks ago on the back end of my website, it was probably about like 45% of my sales were coming from the US.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's so impressive.
Yeah.
I guess it makes me think of, and to the point that you mentioned, just the young people and the Indigenous people who are being more specific with where they shop. And you mentioned earlier, just if you were to build your facility in Mayo, just having a spot where people can develop skills, build self-esteem, that kind of thing. What do you say to the entrepreneurs that are getting into their businesses now, or the ones that might have an idea? What do you say to them when you look at those values? And how do you support them in incorporating those values into their businesses so that everyone is looking out for each other and building self-esteem and building those kind of community hubs?
Yeah, so I actually spend a lot of time with young people in the community, but I also do a lot of talks, especially now over Zoom, with people like university students and youth groups. Like, I get invited to kind of share that knowledge. And I guess one of the things that I talk about is like, stay true to your values and who you are, but also like, don't be afraid to make money. Like, our people need money to survive today. And before, our economies were based on, trade and barter. And so now that just looks differently. And so don't give up the fact that you need to make money. I think it's hard in communities. I had this conversation with a young woman who was making kind of a craft for Christmas, and someone commented to her about, you're making lots of money, right? And I just really had to give her this talk, like, we all need money, and it's because people are jealous and seeing that you're doing well, right? And you just need to do it smart. And this is, it's so important. And so I spend a lot of time, and really that's part of my hope when I get this business out of my house in downtown, is really hopefully to inspire more people to create businesses. Because I really try to stay focused on soap. I do a few other little things now and then, and especially this year. But I get asked about making lip balms and bath bombs and all these different things, but I see those as really opportunities for other young people in my community to do, right? So whether they're trying to make products to gift at traditional potlatches and those ways of giving, or whether they want to make money before Christmas, or they're experimenting with a recipe that somebody in their family gave them, like, there's so many incredible opportunities. And so I see continuing to kind of be a mentor in terms of small business to people in communities, and that there's really, yes, it's hard work and there are incredible challenges, just like any kind of business. But there's so much reward and so many opportunities, and people who want to help. There are a lot of resources out there now for young people, for small business, for startups. Like, there's so much. It's incredible. Now is the time.
As far as challenges go, what would you say has been your biggest challenge?
Again, I think the whole production thing, I feel like that's kind of like always looming over my head right now, is just the supply stuff and being able to ship out. We're really, really lucky to have a Canada Post here and be able to get things out. But, today a store was messaging from Vancouver wanting their stuff shipped like FedEx or UPS. And I'm like, that's just not an option from here. If I was in Whitehorse, yes, but it's not an option from here, unfortunately. So those kinds of hurdles are hard sometimes. And I think really the other part, and important to mention, is just like the whole mental health and wellness, self-care, balance in your life that, you know, I say it's just me, but obviously I have a team of people that help me. But at the end of the day, you know, I'm the one that kind of steers this ship. And so being able to step back and take time. I mean, today I took, you know, I think it was only like 20 minutes to walk the dogs and connect back to the river and listen to the birds, because otherwise I'm making soap or on the computer and doing different things. But it's those kinds of moments to step away that like feed the creativity, ground me, like give me fresh air, all of those things. Super jealous of Lee on her beautiful walk tonight, right? You know, but it's those kinds of things that we need to do. And so definitely time management is a part, as any entrepreneur knows. It's hard to shut off at the end of the day.
Yeah, and can you actually expand on that mental health piece? Because now especially a lot of people are feeling it, you know, having to stay home and reduce the size of their groups and stuff like that. And as an entrepreneur, you're not only trying to keep all that stuff in mind, but like you said, you're trying to keep all those balls in the air. What would you say to other entrepreneurs who say that they can just power through and go 110% and, you know, they're unfazed and it's all fine?
Yeah, don't do that. You're going to burn out. Don't do that. Yeah, I think so much, and that really being able to like talk about it. I mean, we see so much about mental health and not being afraid to speak up if you need help and ask for help. That's a really, really important thing. And to continue to reach out. I mean, I am so lucky that early on in the pandemic, you know, I had a few contacts, other Indigenous women business owners, who started a call every Sunday morning. And that still happens every Sunday morning at 11. There's a network of Indigenous women business owners across Canada, and we all get together. And so through that has been incredible. That yes, I live in this beautiful community in the Yukon, but the support that I needed at that time and the last like 9 months really came from that group, because they're the ones that got it, that, you know, 11 o'clock at night and I can't figure out this financial statement, or I can't do this. They were the ones that were able to offer that support, but also get the challenges of like trying to access capital from banks when you don't own your home, because I live in First Nation housing, or you know, issues with family. Like, it was that group that was really able to provide that support. And, you know, organizations like Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business, like there's so many networks out there that through this group was able to connect with, to provide support.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was really important to me.
And if you don't mind, if I can ask, you know, you talk about the First Nations housing piece and the different resources. Can you maybe talk about some of the challenges that some Indigenous business owners and entrepreneurs might face that people might not fully appreciate or understand?
Yeah, like I think of what we hear the most, and there's been so much research around this, is really the access to capital. And it's, I mean, a little bit different up here in the Yukon, but I mean, I chose to live in Mayo and I chose to live in First Nation housing. But then when it came to try and leverage that to be able to get a mortgage to build my business, had and still have challenges with that. And so that's really, you know, unfortunate, that kind of barrier. And thankfully I'm able to work through it, but I know not everybody is. And certainly we see, you know, there was issues around racism and discrimination and that kind of thing. I mean, I have been fortunate that I haven't felt that directly, but certainly a lot of my peers have, for sure. And then just like systemic problems within like policies and agreements and that kind of thing that, you know, has really posed barriers. And so there are a lot of good people trying to do work to eliminate those barriers, I guess.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and we have a time for a couple more questions. And so if anyone in the chat or on the call would like to ask some, but in the meantime, we do have one that...
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to Kaylin, who just wanted to say what an amazing, or how amazing it is that you're managing to ship 45% to the USA. Kaylin gave 2 thumbs up. I also have my own question. You've talked about how disappointed people are when they come to your site and they see that you're all sold out. Can you see yourself expanding this to be a bigger company where you've got lots of people producing these soaps, or do you think it needs to stay more personal and really have your touch on every piece?
Good question.
No, my goal absolutely is so that I am not involved. That is really my goal. But logistically, like I need it out of my house to be able to do that, right? To be able to, you know, the First Nations community in Mayo is a little bit outside of town. And so it's, you know, at times I have driven to the school to get the girls to come home. So that kind of accessibility piece. But that's why I see having a business downtown, being able to get more people employed. And hopefully I'm just, you know, and I would really like to be able to have a manager. And, you know, I'm entertained thoughts about having different co-op models or different things. And I'm not quite there yet. So I'm not sure what that looks like. But definitely, I really, you know, I have other projects that I would like to work on to help build my community. And so the less that I can be involved, the better. So good question.
And
I have another one if it's a good time.
Yeah, go for it, Rick.
Inga was curious how you handle shipping logistics from Mayo. Do you have a distribution center in Whitehorse? And if you don't, when do you think it would make sense to have a distribution center in Whitehorse?
Yeah, so right now, most of it is out of Mayo. For a few years, I was mostly doing shipping and deliveries actually just out of my parents' house in Porter Creek, because that was a good location that people would go and I'd get inventory and that kind of thing. But it actually became hard just keeping track of what inventory I had there and what inventory I had here and managing that way. So I kind of brought as much of it back here to Mayo because it just was easier to control a little bit in terms of numbers. I do think at one point I'll get back to doing that once I kind of get inventory levels back up and have a good place. I mean, I don't want to take over too much of my parents' house. Every time I go, it's a bit of a joke about it. You know, before it was just their old converted sauna, then it was the garage, now it's the shed, you know, so, you know, I have to be aware of that. And so, you know, I've had little conversations with other makers and creators there about trying to do that. It's certainly in there. And also about having some kind of distribution center out of Vancouver. That has come up a lot too, because I'm shipping to a lot more retailers across Canada also. And so having kind of that drop shipping option to reduce the overall cost. Because I mean, right now, Canada Post is getting so much of people's money. They're the ones really making the money off of this business right now, with the high cost of shipping to the north. So having a more central, I'm not quite there yet in terms of production, but it's getting nearer and nearer for sure.
Yeah, and maybe talking about the facilities and centers and stuff like that, you know, when you move to the downtown space in Mayo, I guess, or as you start to plan for it, what was the trigger where you realized that, you know, running it out of the house was just, you know, it was too big now and you needed to expand? Because that is something that a lot of entrepreneurs deal with, right? When to jump into the next bigger spot.
Yeah, so I think a few things. One is that my house was also being taken over with soap stuff, right? But also the people that I have had working with me in my house, I've been really lucky that they're all my friends' kids, right? That, you know, we're all connected, and so that's easy. I feel comfortable, you know, leaving, they take care of my dog or they water my plants or that kind of thing. So that's easy, right? But I also get a lot of other people wanting to work with me, and I don't necessarily, not that I don't trust the people, but it's more people going in my house. So it just seems, and also for my own like personal work-life balance, to have a separate place for search. So I don't know if there was a specific moment or, you know, just kind of this culmination of events that are like, okay, time to make this happen. And so now really waiting, and I keep saying, well, once I have that building, I mean, I've already been really fortunate. I received a Canor grant last year to be able to buy equipment to be able to scale up. And so that's all sitting there waiting to make soap, but I can't really do that in my home right now. So I'm ready and I have so many ideas. I just need to make it happen.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I guess, the final question I'd like to ask as we wrap up, and I want to thank you for joining us. It's been super insightful and very informative. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us. But what's the final pearl of wisdom that you want to share with people who are watching now, who might be just on the cusp of starting their own business or are in the early days or might have come up against a challenge themselves? What's a pearl of wisdom that you'd like to share with them?
Okay, first, before the pearl of wisdom, I'm throwing up my the first Innovate the North is a discount code for people here watching. So you get a discount if you go and shop. So Innovate the North, throw that into my website. And then also give me a follow at Yukon Soaps Company on Instagram or Facebook, because really, like, when people ask how they can support me, it's about liking, sharing, amplifying, like sharing the story, sharing the message, that you don't necessarily, I didn't press send on that, that it is, buying from me is awesome, but sharing what I'm doing through different social media is huge, right? And yeah, I appreciate that. So pearl of wisdom, is that what it was?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, so much. I mean, really just like stay true to your values, really focus on your bottom line. Like, don't forget to look at your financials. That I think it's really easy, especially for me when it's like a wellness brand, that you can get sucked into wanting to make people happy. But it's not a hobby, it is a business. And so making sure that you are making money is still important, or else why are you doing it? And that's something that you need to look at. Reach out for help. I mean, there's so many, there's so much support out there for small business, and especially in the North. I mean, even just Uconstruct and INE and Canor and Yukon government, there's so many people out there wanting to support Yukoners who have the entrepreneurial spirit. And the Yukon is so incredibly generous that I feel very fortunate to be from this land.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much. It really was, it was very special, and I appreciate you sharing your time. And thank you so much for everyone who signed on tonight to hear you speak.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And just a reminder, we do these on the first Thursday of most months, but we are going to be skipping it in January while everyone's still getting over their New Year's hangovers. So make sure you're signed up to our Facebook so that you get notifications when the next one is posted. And that'll be, should be the first Thursday of February. Thanks again, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Joella.
Okay, see you guys.